Born in India but raised in the UK, Francis Lee was forever getting into fights with skinheads in the 1970s. After learning martial arts to defend himself, a keen comic reader from day one, Francis went a step further and totally geeked out and opened up his own comic book shop.
It's a love story, but it's a love story set against the backdrop of the road from revenge to redemption. It's a love triangle between a woman, a father, and her lover, but it doesn't start out that way. It starts out basically with a situation where you have Sarah, who's the strong female character, and Midnight, who's our hero. Midnight doesn't know who Sarah is behind her mask. Sarah knows who Midnight is behind her mask, and she's blackmailing him into helping her track down and find the guy that she believes is responsible for the death of her mother. The guy they're after is in fact Sarah's father, but he doesn't know he's got a daughter. There's a guy called Raxton. He used to be a former government-sanctioned hitman who's risen through the ranks to the point where he now has direct lines of communication to heads of government, heads of crime cartels, and his call is feared by everyone. For me, comics were always about being storyboards for the little director inside your head. So you'd see a panel, and your imagination would kick in, and it would just transport you to a whole other world. They were my friends when I was growing up. And to this day, I feel that comics, or rather sequential art, whether it's a comic or a graphic novel, is still that same portal to transport you away to another world. If you've had a bad day at school, or a bad day at work, or a row with your wife, or a row with your husband, whatever it is. And for me, that was really the motivation for me wanting to have Tales of Midnight. Having had the comic shop, I know how difficult it is for an independent publisher to maintain distribution for a new title. It's very difficult. There is only really one major distributor for comic books in the world, and that's a company called Diamond Distribution. And they play it very safe. At the end of the day, if your book is a big seller from day one, they'll stock it, they'll distribute it, and they'll make it accessible to the masses. If, on the other hand, it's a new title that's taking its time to get awareness and become established, as a distributor, they're not in the business of supporting new independent titles to that level to keep carrying it month in, month out, irrespective of whether or not it's got the sales. And knowing this, I thought, well, I really want to tell the story about these characters in Tales of Midnight. And I self-published the comic to begin with myself in the shop, and it sold out, which was great. But I knew that even though it sold out in a relatively limited run, it wasn't enough to really make a distribution company like Diamond get behind it and keep behind it month after month. So I decided the best thing to do was to try and create an awareness and a demand for it outside of the comic industry through a licensing campaign to try and get companies interested in the characters, either through their imagery or through the story, and ask companies if they've been producing products which would create brand awareness for the characters and the property ahead of the comic book being published through the comic industry.
I'm on my way. And so Francis created and self-published his comic, Tales of Midnight, which follows the adventures of two crime fighters, Midnight and Sarah, who, complete with utility belts and gadgets in sexy blue spandex, take on whoever stands in their way.
At the time, it made a big impact on me. For example, with my character Midnight, he'll never kill. End of story. No way. There's no motivation.
Well, he's a lawbreaker, though, by night.
He fights for justice, and justice in his eyes is not necessarily the laws made by man.
I've got to say something about Sarah, though. She's damn sexy.
She's very sexy.
I mean, you have not sort of been shy, have you, in her figure and certain.
If you had any idea how many
parts.
people have asked me to reduce the size for boobs, it's. But no, she's all woman.
Has she had a bit of work done?
No, absolutely not. Just good, clean living and healthy exercise and.
Well, I'm now fancying a comic character.
Isn't it interesting?
It is interesting.
Isn't it interesting?
Okay. The good news is that there is a way into the building without you having to go through the guards. The bad news is it's underwater.
Okay. Switching to sonar mode. I'm going in.
signal to your sonar tracker. You're good to go. I'm still getting visuals, but I'm not sure for how much longer. The shielding from the piping is interfering with transmission. Midnight? Midnight!
I found the car. Sarah, are you getting this?
Yes, I have the signal back. We're too late. They must have taken her on board. Be careful. What's happening?
I'm surrounded.